He put his thingy and my thingy, and we did the thingy. In this video, I am going to be talking about how to write sex scenes for your book. Um, yeah. So if you are a writer like me and you're planning on writing sex scenes, but you don't know how to go about it, how to even get started, what to even say, or if you think you're sounding too cheesy or too like Shakespearean or whatever, I'm here to tell you that whatever you want to write down, it is okay. Because I have seen some videos, I'm not gonna lie, I have seen some videos where people are just like, oh, don't sound like this, don't write like that. But there's always something for everybody. Not everybody's going to like the same thing. And some people do like that Shakespearean poetic talk. So if you want to describe certain body parts, like calling dick a sword, I mean, it's for me, I would get a good laugh out of your book. But to others, they would like that. Some people like that. And either way, even if people are laughing at what you're writing, the world is it could be so miserable. Getting a good laugh out of something is, to me, I see that as a win-win because you're taking their minds out of whatever chaos they're going through. So I mean, I would look at it like that. I already look at it like that with my book because, that's a whole nother story. But I'm going to give you some tips of what I've done and how it's helped me and how I think it could help you. Okay. I don't know how this is a issue with some writers. I kind of find it cute in a way, but some issues that writers have is they don't know how to make a sex scene consensual without it being awkward or without it being like straight up rapey-ish. And it's kind of cute because it's not, I never really saw that as an issue because it's basically just building up the storyline and building characters and taking it on from there, like whether two people are flirting with each other or whether, like, maybe someone has liked someone that the other person doesn't, and then later on they just start liking the person. It's like throwing signs that, okay, two people are feeling each other and something's going to happen, right? So when you get to that moment, it's usually, you got to think of it like real life. Like, when you're about to, have sex or whatever, it's never like the guy asking the girl like, "May I have sex with you?" and she's just like, "Okay." It's never like that. It's usually like some type of, it's like a vibe where the guy is moving in closer and the girl, she's like, playing with her hair and slightly looking away, and she's like blushing and you can see her cheeks turn red and stuff like that, and she's also like moving in closer, and then bam, it happens. So that's, for me, that's how I write. I never like make it too awkward where, yeah, it's a vibe. It's not supposed to be something awkward and may I have sex with you type of situation. And if you do write like that, it it is gonna come out awkward. So just, write like, you have to go off of your experience. Like, what was it like for you when you first had sex, or when you're about to have sex, and yada yada yada. Like, it doesn't have to be too serious, and that's the problem with the world today. Like, people are being too serious with things, and it's not that serious. So I don't know how much more I can like talk on that base, because it's really self-explanatory. It's a vibe. That's it. The second tip I have goes with the first tip, which is not making the sex scene so random. And that's basically like, there's two characters that you wouldn't expect to start randomly having sex. There was no signs of either one of them like liking each other or whatever. It just happened. I mean, stuff usually like stuff like that you see in erotica books where it's like back to back to back to back. But if you're writing a book that's not erotica but it has sex scenes in it, you should have a build up with those characters. Don't make it so random where it's just like what, how did that happen? I did not foresee this. Like, at least drop some hints. And let me see. I wrote a few books so far, and every one of the characters that encountered sex scenes in my writings, it wasn't random. It was always a build up. So this next tip is so important. I think it's the most important tip that I'm going to give in this video, and it's about fantasy. When you're writing sex scenes, it's a fantasy. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I've had come across some videos where people spoke about how making sex scenes realistic. Like, for instance, I came across this one video where this person was talking about when you have two characters and one is gonna pinned up against the wall, and who has enough arm power to hold somebody up for that long, and blah 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 blah. And certain, like, having sex in like areas where it's just unrealistic, like the bed should be good enough. First of all, if you haven't had sex in places where it's like you shouldn't be doing it at, it's like really discreet, like, oh my god, somebody's gonna catch us. If you haven't done none of that, then I'm sorry, you haven't lived. And although the bed alone is great enough, you know, it's a book. Like, you're supposed to be taking people's minds out of their everyday mundane and throwing them into a fantasy. Who doesn't want to read something about having sex on the beach or whatever? Like, yes, there's a bunch of sand and whatever, like, I mean, it's a fucking fantasy. I don't get it. Like, I don't want to read something that's so unnecessary realistic to where the sex scenes is just boring. And the people who give these type of advice, I swear, I feel like they be telling them themselves. I feel like they just have the wackest sex life ever. Like, I don't know. So make it, you know, it's a fantasy. And that's, first of all, sex books are like one of the top books sold. I think first, of course, is the Bible. And I think sex might be number 2 or number 3 the last time I checked. So you might as well just, like, give your all. Don't listen to people when they say it's unrealistic to have a dude pin a girl up against the wall and fuck her for so long, like his arms are not getting tired. Like, I mean, that's pretty realistic to me. Like, you've never been in the moment where you just have such an adrenaline rush that you'd be doing things that you didn't think that you could do. Like, never been in that situation. That's, you know, I don't know. Make it a fantasy. Don't be too realistic to the point where it's just boring. Like, life is fun too. It's not everything is boring. So if you want to write a scene where they're having sex in the woods or the movie theater or whatever the case may be, like, go for it. Yeah, that's my tip. Another thing that I want to point out is size does matter. So whoever keeps saying size does not matter, I feel sorry for you, because it does. But the thing is, I think some writers overdo it. So when it comes to I'm gonna be stereotypical here, but it's true. When it comes to ethnic groups writing books and talking about sex scenes, they always describe the dicks being 12 inches. Like, first of all, if I'm about to do it with someone and he whips it out and it's 12 inches, I'm running out the door. Like, that's too much. Too much of something is not good. First of all, who is fucking down 12 inches of dick? So for me, it don't need to be overly dramatically big, but it doesn't need to be small. I don't even know. I don't want to read a book about small dicks. I'm sorry. But it shouldn't be 12 inches. For me, it's, now I'm telling on myself. And I feel like whoever's going to read my books, they're going to see that I have a pattern for things. And you can't help yourself. Like, when you write stories and sex scenes, like, parts of you do, like, you know, come off in these books. Because I see a pattern with myself. All the dudes that I describe in my book have thick hands and thick dicks. Like, that's just my thing. So for me, that helps me out. I don't overdo it. And you don't need to describe dicks being 12 inches. Like, there's other ways you could describe it being big without saying the number. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. I know with the last tip I said make things like a fantasy. Don't be too realistic to the point where it's boring. I know, like, I said that tip, and then in this tip I'm saying, like, stop describing dicks as like 12 inches. Because, you know, that could be a fantasy too. But, I mean, you know what I mean? The next one, it kind of goes hand in hand with the tip that I just gave, and me just pointing out, like, going off of your, like, experience and how that's gonna, like, leak into the writings where people will start noticing things about you. Like me, I have a pattern. Like, I'm into thick hands. I'm sorry, like, I'm into thick hands and thick penises. So I can't help myself when I write these scenes and I describe the guy, you know, those features are gonna pop out. Like, I can't, it's hard for me to write about things that I haven't experienced. So yeah. And I feel like when people try to, like, be very diverse with their writing, sometimes it comes off as very cringy and awkward. Like, there was this one writer, she wrote a story about a girl who was, like, the author is Caucasian. The character that she wrote was half Puerto Rican and half Caucasian. And her hair was, like, you know, really thick and stuff like that. But the way, I see where she was going with it, but the way she was describing it was, like, very cringy. But I know she didn't mean no harm, but it was still cringy. So it's like, you could, I would say, do your best to, like, do a lot of research on whatever you're trying to write. So when it comes to, like, writing sex scenes with somebody that is, like, of an ethnic race that you never experienced before, or dealing with somebody who's skinny or fat or whatever, just either try your best to put yourself in the moment or do enough research on it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but, like, for me, I can't write stories about guys with small dicks. That's very hard. So there you go. This next one is also important, and I just want to throw this out there, and it's probably going to like turn the vibe down of this video just a little bit, but it needs to be said. Be mindful of what you write, because what you write can impact a generation. It could influence someone. You don't know how far you're going to go with these books. You never know. You can make it, anybody can make it big as long as you have good marketing, of course. So I'm not going to say you might not make it, because anybody can make it, especially with the things that are coming out today and the artists and the anything can sell. But say like your books do really well, you should be mindful what you write, because I'm gonna be stereotypical again. When it comes to writing ethnic people writing, well, ethnic writers writing stories, and you know, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I've read a lot of books growing up about girls in the hood. That was one of the first books I was introduced to as a kid. I remember junior high school. It was like after school, all my friends were gathering around reading this book, and they called me over to like read certain parts, and I was like, "What the heck are y'all reading?" And that's when I first came across books that had sex in it. And you know, these books, very hood, uh, very ghetto, but the sex scenes were wild. I'm not even gonna front. I remember like being glued to these books, like, holy, like, what the fuck am I reading? But as I got older, I had to stop, because the storylines were so toxic. It's just like, this is what I'm feeding my brain. And it was always basically like the baddest chick in the hood falls for the drug dealer, and you know, either the drug dealer always dies or ends up in jail, and she's like so in love with him, and she's like doing drug dealings for him and all this other stuff. It's just, it never ends well. Like this last book that I've read, this lady, she was a correction officer, and there was this guy in jail. He was tall, dark, and handsome, and she wanted a piece of him. So she was able to go into his jail cell and like fucked him on the first night. And he busted in her, got her pregnant. A year later, she's like in love with him, and he's still in jail, but he's paying her through like his boys on the outside. They're like still selling his drugs and all that stuff. Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what the fuck did I just read? Like, it's, you know, I don't know. Sometimes fantasies can go too far. So I'm being hypocrite with this too. It's like, I can see why there are girls in the hood, the ghetto, whatever, that fall for these like big time drug dealers. And it's not saying that this is the main reason, but I bet on it that reading these books plays a part, because it gets into the mind and you start like forming things that you never thought you would like before. But from reading these books and whatever else you're into, listen to the music, you know, it gets into the mind and you start acting just like the characters in the books or whatever you listen to in these songs. So I can see why a lot of women are into like the crazy bad boys that just end up in jail or dead or whatever. So at least when you're writing these books, like, at least I want to hear the guy's side of the story too. Like, what got him into that drug life? Does he even want to be into that drug life? Or like, is he planning on getting out? Like, I want to hear stuff about that. I don't want to just hear about the girl being very infatuated by this dude who has a lot of money, has a lot of watches, drives in nice cars, and then it's just like drama, drama, drama. I never really hear about the guy's side of the story of how he got into that, and is he even getting out of that, and da 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 da. Like, you know, there's two sides to the story. I'm making this a long video. I didn't mean to, but there's so much to unpack with this. So the last tip I had was the first that I've said getting into this video, which is just go with it. Like, whatever you want to write, however you want to write it, just go for it. If you are poetic, if you are dramatic, if it's dark, if it's nasty, just go with it. There's always something for everybody. Not everybody's gonna like the same thing, and yeah. And if everybody's writing the same, then I'm sorry. There's just no, there's not enough seasoning. There's not enough diversity. There's not enough flavor. Everything's the same. So do your best to stand out. And when you stand out, that's how you end up selling anyway, because it's different. For an example, I have read this book recently, and I forgot the genre of this. I'm definitely going to read more because I had such a blast reading this book. And it is called The Haunted Vagina. Like, literally, it's literally called The Haunted Vagina. And basically, it's about this guy who's dating this girl, and he keeps hearing noises. He keeps hearing noises and coming from her cooch. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? And she's just like, oh. She's like, my vagina's haunted. It's been like that since I was a kid. Like, what? So, and I'm not gonna tell the whole thing, but there was a skeleton that had crawled out of her, which never happened before. And they like killed it before it started like forming like flesh on its bones. And she was just like, if that could come out of me, then you can like get inside and see what's going on and blah blah. And fast forward, he goes inside her vagina, and it's like a different world, and he ends up falling in love with another being that's inside a vagina. It's just the book is hilarious, and it took my mind off of. Actually, I wasn't even thinking about anything. My mind was so into the book. It was so funny and hilarious, and then it got serious at the end, and then it got deep, like Inception deep, and then it ended really fucked up. But all in all, like my mind was so glued to the book that I wasn't thinking about anything else. So the book sells itself. Like I never seen this book marketed. It's always word of mouth or like a meme that I've seen on Facebook, and that's how I came across it. And I was like, what the fuck? So I read it, and it's, some people thought it was like the stupidest thing they ever read, but to me it was just pure genius. The book literally sells itself. And going back to what I was saying, like being different and standing out, you don't want to be the same, and you don't want to write the same. Shit's boring. Anything else? I don't know. I think I rambled too much, but I hope I gave good advice. So, yeah.